One of the big mysteries about Bitcoin is the fixed supply. A lot of people that are new to Bitcoin or are trying to study it or learn more about it is they're trying to conflate the image that they have of Bitcoin, which is that this is a Bitcoin, which is this is a souvenir that somebody makes out of, I don't know, aluminum or whatever, and it's not worth anything. So realistically, a Bitcoin looks more like this. It looks more like a lot of numbers, right? And the reality about Bitcoin is because of the fixed supply, which is 21 million, there's only 21 million Bitcoin that'll ever exist. It means that you have a firm grasp on how much Bitcoin there will be in supply at any given time. Currently, we are issuing 900 Bitcoin a day on the mining through mining, right? So as the miners are competing, every roughly 10 minutes, there's a new block reward. The block reward is 6.25 Bitcoin. So when you multiply that out times six, for hours, and then 24 for hours in the day, then you get about 900. Some days the blocks come a little faster, some a little slower, but basically that's where it is. We experienced a halving in May of 2020, which is where the block issuance went from 1,800 to 900. And during that period of time, there was a lot of mystery. It was just coming off a really weird, like spooky rally where it dumped and then came back up, and people didn't really know how to address the fact that the supply was going to be different, and as a result of the supply being different, how much were people willing to pay because of some sort of like FOMO psychological mechanism of we're running out of Bitcoin. Realistically, as we're filming this, there's about 18.9 million Bitcoin that have already been mined. Okay. And every Bitcoin that ever has existed was mined. There was no gift of Bitcoin. There was no secret treasure trove of Bitcoin. Bitcoin has been very programmatic, which is to say it's a rule in the system that just does this and that's it. There's a little bit more every day. So every couple of years that stops. So the people that were really early at mining were getting 50 Bitcoin every 10 minutes if they won. I mean, obviously they're not winning every single one of them, but the really early Bitcoin guys had more Bitcoin than they knew what to do with, because at the time Bitcoin wasn't necessarily traded or wasn't really worth much. So theoretically, there was somebody in 2010 that had 100,000 Bitcoin and didn't know what to do with it because there wasn't really the opportunity to sell it, and there wasn't really all the flexibility for liquid markets like there is now. I think I was I was trying to explain this to somebody, but the easiest thing I can say is the total worth of the world measured in dollars is roughly $600 trillion. So that's six and a lot of zeros. Okay. Um, there's 100 million pieces of a Bitcoin called Satoshis in every Bitcoin. So every Bitcoin can be broken down into like sats, and there's one sat per, one sat right now is, I don't know, thousandths of a cent or something like that. So you basically get, or thousandths of a dollar. So if you were to take $1, you would get about 1,700 or 2,000 Satoshis for $1. So if you're using something like Cash App or Swan, where they actually allow you to denominate your purchases in sats, it's kind of a cool way to stack sats. And then it also forces you to stay humble, because you have this whole element of thinking like, well, there's only so many of them. I'm trying to get whatever I can. And that's really where I think the mentality of Bitcoin is much different, where people look at it as an additive savings mechanism to say, okay, I might not be able to go sweep up 1,000 Bitcoin today, right? Because you can do that with some of these other cryptocurrencies. You get what's called unit bias. So if you think about Satoshis, you could be a Satoshi millionaire for a couple $100. And if Bitcoin continues to do this up and to the right, well, up and to the right for me, but on the chart, I guess it would go this way. Um, you would see a growth in the value of the Satoshis, just like if you had one whole Bitcoin. And right now, if you were to multiply 100 million Satoshis per Bitcoin times 21 million Bitcoin, you would get 2.1 quadrillion Satoshis. So theoretically, if a Satoshi was worth $1, you would still have 3.5 times the total market capitalization of every asset on the planet. So that's real estate, gold, diamonds, stock markets, all these other things, physical cash in every other currency. So there's still a lot of room for Bitcoin to absorb elements of the world economy and convert elements of the world economy. But I think what's most helpful to understand is how do you buy Bitcoin and where does it go? Where does the money go? Right. So theoretically, you sign up to an exchange, you send them dollars. I'm speaking to my American friends or Canadian friends or Australian friends that use the dollar. If you're using a different currency, same thing. You're taking a couple of your, national currency and you're converting it for Bitcoin, right? So then the exchange then at some point has that liquidity. And what they do with that is if someone makes a withdrawal, then they have the cash to do that. So an exchange really, it functions just like one of those kiosks at the airport that's trying to sell you British pounds for too expensive and buy them for too cheap. So they do that with so much volume that you'll have exchanges like Coinbase Pro that are doing $1 billion in volume a day just in Bitcoin, Bitcoin versus dollars. So if people are sending money into the exchange to buy Bitcoin, then that's really where the price and liquidity of the whole market comes together. So in general, when you're trading, if you're going to be a heavy trader and you're going to put money in and take money out on a routine basis, you want to chase the biggest liquidity and you don't want to have them run out of cash. So that's, one of the biggest issues with Bitcoin is it's a little bit different than if you're just buying everything on a centralized thing, such as the Dow Jones or NASDAQ or something, where all the stocks are traded in the same pool. But because you have all these different exchanges that set all these different prices and it's all live marketing, you might have a Bitcoin being more expensive in one place than another place. And because Bitcoin is scarce, what you see is there's a flow of Bitcoin moving from exchange to exchange, off of exchange, onto exchange. And there's websites like Glassnode where you can actually watch the liquidity of Bitcoin as a Bitcoin comes. If I want to sell a Bitcoin, I'm not just going to throw it in the air. I'm going to bring it in to get the best price. And generally speaking, the best price is on as an exchange like Binance US or Kraken or Coinbase or Gemini or whatever else. So you bring that Bitcoin back and then they see that on the blockchain. You can actually see like the Bitcoins moving around. And one of the coolest things about Bitcoin is that you can set bots up on Twitter to monitor when big moves happen. So for instance, when Michael Saylor or Elon Musk or any of these people were buying 5,000 Bitcoin at a time or something about a year ago, there was these periods of time where it was mysterious that there would be 5,000 Bitcoin leaving an exchange. And you could see that, and it's really out there for everybody. And because there's a fixed supply, you sort of know that there's only so many games you can play, because once someone takes the Bitcoin personally and they take it with them, there's really some of these people, it's a one-way trade. They're never going to sell that Bitcoin back. And the more people that take that really creates the scarcity. And as the whole model is basically the price is going like this, the issuance is going like this, the adoption is going like this, and the issuance, I should say, is like chopping down, like on a fixed schedule. And the way that they do that is Bitcoin won't finish mining until the year 2140. Okay, so if you imagine 120 years from now, people will still be running some sort of Bitcoin mining system in order to compete for fees and compete for everything else. So the fees are actually paid to the miners. So the miners that are working those blocks to try to guess the right, guess the right hash function in order to win the Bitcoin block reward, there's actually a mining like fee that is associated with that. So if you do send Bitcoin to somebody, then you might pay $1, $5, whatever it is, and that $5 cumulatively adds up. And so in a block, there will be somewhere between 1,000 and 3,500 transactions or something. And so if you multiply that out, some of these blocks will be not only the 6.25 Bitcoin, but they might be another like 0.2, 0.3, 0.4 Bitcoin in terms of mining fees. And so the winner in that case of the block gets all of that. So it's a really cool process, and it incentivizes people to participate in mining, despite the fact that price is going to be variable and price is going to change. So that's one of the most interesting things. And as I've gotten deeper and deeper into Bitcoin, I've wanted to participate in mining on a recreational level, just because I feel like it's really tied to everything that happens on the network. And but the fixed supply is really a big deal. That's a really big deal, and no other substance on Earth can really claim to have a finite scarcity like that, a measurable scarcity, because I think there's this like unknown situation where even with gold or something like that, which traditionally has been a very scarce thing, there's an element of if it's worth enough, we'll keep digging for it. And then that sort of actually, in a way, tamps the price down because you're always putting more on the market. And we've been effectively collecting gold for 3, 4, 5,000 years, maybe, or something like that. So there's a case to say that Bitcoin is much more rare than anything. And because it's fixed, because it's ruled by rules and not rulers, that won't change. And that is probably one of the most interesting and most special cases about Bitcoin, is that but it has to be divisible, because if it's just a physical coin, I can't just cut this in half and buy one piece of bread. But if it's a digital thing, if it doesn't have any other use other than money, then you're able to take a couple sats, a couple thousand sats at today's prices and buy something. And that really, and you might have a million sats. So if you break off a million sats off a 10 million block, or 1,000 sats off a million block, then you still have room to spend and to appreciate, and also in a way convert your head into thinking, I need to be stacking sats, not just buying point zero zero whatever Bitcoin. Because I think it's very challenging to think like that. It's very easy to say, oh, one sat equals this, $1 equals this, and then how do I get $100 or $500 or whatever worth of Bitcoin through this transaction? And that is a little bit of a 101 on Bitcoin scarcity and the fixed supply.